Okay, I'm ready when you are.
Okay, well, now we're going to try to write a sonnet.
Okay, just wait, let me do a countdown here so I don't have any problems with it. Let me just double check a pen here. Okay. 5, 4.
Okay, well, now we're going to try to write a sonnet here. We're in my den here. Whoops, there goes the pencil. if you can see here, this is sort of like the factory here. I've got poems here. If you pan over, that are the folded ones are ones that have come back rejected. The other ones are ones to go out. Up there are bigger poems. Here's my trusty typewriter, and here's my notebook where I do generally smaller poems, mostly sonnets and whatnot. And as you can see, there's a lot of scribbling there, crossing out and whatnot. The purpose of this exercise is I got the idea. There's a fellow I know in this salon group started by this fellow from this list of Twin Cities artists that I started. And one night at the salon, he showed a time-lapse photography of, or film of him doing a nude sketch. I thought that'd be interesting to do a poetic equivalent of that. And so I'm going to try to do a sonnet. Since it's a small form, it has certain dicta that has to be followed. And so it's fairly easy. And also to show that you don't have to wait for divine inspiration. Now, there are several topics here. I haven't settled on a topic, but the other day I was thinking maybe doing a killer sonnet. I've got a series of sonnets on famous killers in history, international serial killers, gangsters, and such. And I was thinking of doing a local guy, or fairly local guy, Ed Gein, who was the inspiration for Psycho and also the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So basically what has to be done here, I think I'm going to go with that. I was thinking of doing maybe one on my childhood, or perhaps there's a paranormal incident about this Mattoon gasser, which was this person who apparently tried to gas people in their homes during World War II in this Mattoon, Illinois, or Ohio it was. But I think I'll stick with the Ed Gein one. I did a couple of more open and sunny and uplifting sonnets over the weekend, so I think we'll go for a killer. So the first thing to do is to get sort of, if we want to take a baking metaphor, is to try to get the ingredients. And so we have to look up for the historical elements. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and get my encyclopedia, or a couple of books on killers, and look up a few facts of Ed Gein's life. And I haven't planned this, so usually what you want to do is get into a character, especially in a sonnet, or a moment, or something that stands out in their life, and that's the extrapolation that gets you into them. So let me get my my killer books here. As I said, Gein was supposedly the inspiration for the film Psycho. Now here's my crime encyclopedia. It's not really that good of a book. It's got a few interesting things here, but let me look up Gein here, see if he's even in this book. Let's see. Gein. Ed Gein. E-F-G. Ed Gein, 138 and 274. Let's see, 274. Okay, 274, he's only mentioned here, so 138 in passing. So let's see what they have to say. And what I'll do is try to get a handful of facts to establish the Gein persona, because while he may be well known, especially here in the Midwest, 200 years from now in Saudi Arabia, no one might know who the hell he is. So, and probably don't know now. Okay, G, 138. Edward Gein, 1906 to 1984. Well, so there's the first fact here. 1906 to 1984. And Ed Gein, we'll just use that as a working title to start with. A very strange American, crafted, as a waistcoat. Okay, so let's see. We know he was a cannibal, and he made a waistcoat and belt from human flesh. So that's interesting. From human flesh. So these are sort of like the ingredients I put on the side. Gein's idea and intent equally bizarre. You want to use them as containers. Okay, so he used So he used skulls as bowls. And I think also in the movie Silence of the Lambs that Hopkins won for, the Buffalo Bill character there was based on Gein as well. So he's had quite a cultural influence, at least in the slasher films of the 80s and 90s. Slitting up side tan and free ginga, he found in lifeless sprinkles by denying his capacity as a butcher, worked in the woodshed, block and tackle. Let's see. I think you get the right idea. Woven. In real life, Gein was a precursor to Dahmer. For example, I did a Dahmer sonnet called Dahmer in the Summer of Love in 1968, set as a little fucked up boy. You're going to have to bleep that one. But anyway, oh yeah, and here Gein's influence, yeah, Little Cat, Buffalo Bill, The Skin Transvestite of Silence of the Lamb, Bret Easton Ellis's American Psycho, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Psycho. So yeah, so let's see, the Oedipal motives. Okay, that's always good, but that's overworked, but we can also use that as perhaps something looming in the background. The room had been nailed shut. Okay, so his mom died in 45. Mom died in 45. He never enjoyed anyone before she died. Ma Gein drummed into the sex and masturbation was worth. So, let's see, sex before marriage, which is fornication, and masturbation are sins. So in a lot of ways he's very classic here. So what we're getting here is something that's going to need to have some other element brought into it. Otherwise we're just going to get, you know, some kind of Oedipal fixation, and that's not really particularly interesting. Ma kept in touch after she passed on, so okay, so he's talking to her. He was impressed by Christine Jorgensen's sex change operation. That's interesting. Interested in sex change. Household knickknacks, Gein's arrest, Ma Warden, two local girls vanished from the train, Gein's home was razed, House of Horror tourist attraction. So let's see, house became attraction afterwards. So let's see, so he was arrested in 57. So probably what we want to do is do something afterwards, because you know, I've done poems before on people actually killing and whatnot, and that's not necessarily the most interesting part of a killer. It's what goes into it, what comes after it. For example, I've done a pair of sonnets on Leopold and Loeb, the thrill killers from the 20s, and what was interesting about them wasn't the fact that they killed, really, but their homosexual relationship and how that played out. Let's see, Gein died on July 24th. Okay, arrested 57, died in 84. So that means he had 27 years to basically stew. Gein died as an ideal patient. So that's an interesting thing. He was an ideal patient and prisoner. So here's a guy who, when let loose in society to his own means, was a totally screwed up human being, but yet when put into the strictures of someone else's care, apparently was a good, solid human being. Ideal patient and prisoner. So that's something interesting that might be used here. And there was a fan club. Okay, so that's some basic stuff, and so, probably a lot of that is recapitulated in these two other books. But let me just flip through here. EFG Gein. See if there's any other tidbits. Because what you'll want to do is always go for a couple of sources, because it's like getting a parallax, 2 or 3 perspectives. It lets you get depth perception rather than just flat. So here, Edward Gein. Ed Gein, America's most famous murderer. Well, this is a dated book, obviously. His crimes in front of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so we're getting redundancy. Born 8/8/1906, so he was born 1906. August 8th. From childhood had been ambiguous about masculinity. Again, Christine Jorgensen, fascinated between 50 and 54. So he was also a grave robber. That's another famous fact. But again, that's something that's probably not going to be something that's interest in the bone here. The choice of bits was specifically preserved. December 54, killing, and really his victims, and it sounds cold, but his victims really aren't that important. The only poem that I think of a killer that I've done where the victim was, the focus of the poem was when I did a poem called De Salvo Unsolved about the Boston Strangler, and I did the poem based on the one black woman he killed, which was interesting because usually most of them, he started out with old women and then progressed to young white women, but there was one black woman that he killed, so that was the into the DeSalvo character. Let's see here. Deputies, skin decorations, skin. So basically, nothing in these books here that give me two fresh vaginas. Okay, so that's nothing in this particular book. Now here's the New Murderers Who, which is generally the best of the books that I've used. Published in Britain, Great Britain. For example, here's a guy, just Paul John Knowles. I did a sonnet called Paul John Knowles, Murderer, Rapist, Prognosticator. He predicted his own death. He was a real psycho, too. But let's see here. AFGK. Let's see. Albert Fish. That's the one you didn't like, Dylan. There he is, the old guy who used to stick needles in his groin.
Go fish.
Go fish. Let's see, EFG. We're going back here. Okay. John Wayne Gacy I've done. Here's Gein, and there's a picture of Gein, just in case you didn't know. A little dinky kind of a man, you know. Nothing, but anyway. Let's see if there's any facts here. Middle-aged farmer, denied an interest, overbearing mother, worked at farm. So he's a farmer, an Oedipal farmer, tilling the earth, mother, female. There's something there, perhaps. His practice was a ghoulish and extreme. 51-year-old woman, 54, killing her. Okay, man's perverted pastime. Grave robber, necrophile, cannibal. Film psycho. His petition, okay. He sought a sanity hearing. Okay, now there's an interesting fact. 1974, he seeks a sanity hearing. So that's something that may be. So these are things, and I don't know how I'm going to use them. I probably won't use all of them. It's only 14 lines that I can do. But petition was turned down by Judge Golmar. So that's something here. Judge Golmar. Sanity hearing after spending 30 and a model inmate. So those are the basic facts. There really isn't that much to work from here because a lot of these ideas and themes have been recapitulated in other more interesting characters. This was basically a loner. So let me get this stuff out of the way. So now what you do is, since I've got the basic facts of this guy's life, now we want to put them in some kind of order, something that's an in, and I still don't know what. So this is why I've got a sheet of lines that are interesting. So I'm going to scan through some of these lines and maybe anywhere from 2 to 6 lines that might interest me. And I'm not necessarily looking for violent lines, since obviously anyone reading about Ed Gein and just the things that are going to appear are going to portray him as a violent, fiendish individual. So you want lines that are going to stick out, especially some that might stick out tangentially, or even something in total opposition that can bring something into focus, because sometimes you have to be far away from something to get in order to understand conservatism, you have to be an extreme liberal, in other words. Let's see here. So I'm going to scan through here, see if I can get a few lines here. Evil must confuse to win. Now, that's a good line, but Gein was probably not smart enough. Pepper pot, perfection lives, twist of theory, nothing in that sheet. Well, here's an interesting line that I may use. Fidelity is ruin, because we know that Gein here, as what it says, is that he had a sort of slavishness to his mother's memory here. She died 12 years before he was caught, and that's something. And fidelity is a word that has multiple meanings. Well, no. Let's see here. Here's an interesting word, grabastic. It's not a particularly poetic word, but it's something that it sounds like bastard. It has sexual connotations. I might use that somewhere, just because I don't know I don't know physically what the poem is going to look like yet, but it's something here. Let's see. Okay. So that's that sheet. Let's see here. See, when I did the Dharma sonnet, I specifically showed how wacky he was as a kid. I don't want to go in that direction because I don't like to repeat myself. I'm still trying to find out the into Gein here. Let's see here. I don't want to do the hunting. Let's see. Here's a line that I got here. Smile is a hint of the skull. Now we know he was doing something with skulls. He became a model prisoner. That's something that might tie together. So, smile is a hint of the skull. So these again, just like the facts of his life, these lines sort of provide a frame by which I can string the whatever I'm going to say about him. Let's see here. I don't need that one. Let's see here. I'm trying to look now, see if I can make any connections between his life and some of the lines here. House, ideal prisoner. I don't. My idea right now is not to do anything too graphic or violent because that would be too expected. Well, here's a phrase, a space and time, and that's from actually from a 10 years after album from the early 70s, 10 years after Alvin Lee. I've always liked that phrase, but this is something that might work in a poem like this because we know that there was basically nothing in his life after he got caught. He was a model prisoner, so there's an emptiness there. That's a line that might work somewhere. I don't know if I'm going to use it, but a space and time. Thank you, Alvin Lee. Let's see. Reason has its own enemy of rainbows, from business to wasness, distractive. Distractive is an interesting word. Grabastic, distractive. They sound alike too. One of the things too is my mind generally likes alliteration and assonance, putting together words that sound alike or have time. And also words like grabastic, distractive, they're dissonant. They can be used even if I don't take a violent approach. They're words that in the mix are going to give a sense of that he's not quite there. It's the sound equivalent of maybe a facial tic or something, and that's what we want to sort of compose. That this is the photo. The guy looks ghoulish, but more than likely, when he was alive, people probably thought of him as an ideal neighbor, a quiet, weird little man that was pretty harmless. Slip under your skin, flesh. That might be too. That's a line that could be used in a sexual poem, and obviously in a poem like this. But I don't know if I want to go that. So I'm also looking for lines that might be totally not here, not anything to do with it. Also reliable, but let's see. Singing as my lips turn slow to stone is an interesting line, and it's a first line. But I don't know, but just the singing as his lips, I don't know whether I want to take the first person attack into him because I doubt he's that coherent. So I'm probably leaning towards having an omniscient speaker. Shape the odor of dreams. My hell is clarity. Don't want to get too explicit. Love chores, love tasks. You said you learned another man. Let's see. Oh boy, let's see. Well, here's a line that's a very Thomas Hardy-like line that might be interesting. A bough that for a moment sways or stays that I've been looking to use. And that's something that would be a poem on memory, but it would be interesting to put that in here. Let me think how I might use that. Bough that for a moment sways. Let's say maybe if he's looking out his window. That might be something that could. Well, yeah, that's something. A bough that for a moment sways and stays, because that would give me a way to start and end the poem slightly different. Let's see. A bough that for moment sways slash stays. So that's something, I think, that, and it's an innocent enough line that could have a nice jarring effect to start with innocence and end with some kind of innocence. And I don't know yet if I even want to descend into depravity. Maybe just doing a poem on Gein implies that. But then again, you have to worry or think about, 500 years from now in Outer Mongolia, is someone going to be interested in this? So you have to put a little bit something of his story in. That's always a concern in any historical poem. How historical are the figures? Obviously, someone like Lincoln is probably going to be known till the end of time, so you don't have to really do that. But if you're doing a poem on Madonna, 50 years from now, no one will probably care about her. Nothing against Madonna. Let's see here. So let's see. We've still got a couple of sheets to go here, and then we'll start trying to put them together here.
You wouldn't mind some things against Madonna.
Well, I know she's always kind of skanky. I prefer that little Jewel. That Jewel, the singer, the little blondie. She's got a book of poems out. Terrible poems, but come to me, I will teach you. Let's see here. Here's a nice comic line that I'll probably use in a poem about my father. Which ball did I come from, the left or the right? It's an interesting question, but I doubt I can use it here. Inward breath of sex with trust and no love. So now I'm thinking if I'm gonna, my main thrust is now to have maybe Gein or put him in some kind of idyllic setting. I think the idea of having him in some hermetic, sealed off place is the way to go into this poem. And the contrast between a word like sways and stays, or maybe starting stays and ends with sways, is something that's the way to go here. Now again, if I were doing this poem tomorrow without the cameras and doing a poem on Gein, who knows what I'd come up with, but everything, the moment matters, I guess. Let's see. Lick your silver pussy. That's the line I'd like to use before. Tangle of mirrors. Mirrors is an overused metaphor in poetry, though. Beauty but a word. That would be an interesting line to use in a Gein poem. You render beauty but a word, or who renders beauty but a word. Some variant on that. I don't. That would probably be pushing it. Because again, if I were doing a poem on Ted Bundy, who was real smart, that would be a good. That would be. I think I could do that, but you have to consider the character of the person. Oh, let's see. I had no. Okay. Even the touch and feel. So I'm now looking for not only, but now I'm trying to look for quiet lines. Lines maybe with some nature, Edenic kind of lines, because that's I think where I'm heading here. How to twist the love out of that. I've used variants of that line before, but I don't know if I want to imply. I doubt Gein even sickly understood love, and if I'm speaking from a third person, I don't know. Once a woman's flesh and symphony. I use that line, gotta scratch that out. Art remains a hot pot, love bears its contradictions, last death on the last battlefield. Oh. Let's see, so let's put that there. Only you relate. Only it relates. A bough that for a moment sways, stays. Only it relates. Only it relates. Because we got the R's, relates, stays, sways, distractive, T's, grabastic. So let's try a variant on the line I've got here. Only it relates. That's because now I'm thinking that also sound-wise has a lot of the T's and S's and the A, the long A sounds too. So now I've got down to my last line. Hopefully I've got enough here, but let me see if I can get one or two more lines. Okay. Pain is weapon feed on the carrying of rash shadows. Gemstones of the needy. Necessity obviates trust. Pettiness, seeking perspective. That's an interesting line. Pettiness, seeking perspective. But again, I don't know how summarizing I want to be in this poem, and I can't do it if I'm doing it from the first person. Gein, that's beyond Gein, and it's probably too summary for a third person. Let's see. Let's see. What does the dreamer save the dream? As long as we end. Then there was life. That's an interesting. Let's see. About the for a moment sways, and then there was life. Now that, since we know that he after being captured spent 27 years in prison or institutions, it's interesting that I don't know if I'm going to use that one, but that's an interesting line, especially for a killer. And it's a generic enough line that it's dependent upon other lines around it to give it texture and meaning. Let's see. Failure of purpose. Nothing has changed. The desire. Remember you. The seisms of spring. Fencing sands. Dust lights on that which dies. Blue darker than religion. I used that one. Let me go back. Sometimes you have to go through a couple of times, because now the first couple of sheets that I went through was before I decided on doing something silent and hermetic. So let me see here. Not last, but first respects. Paying the first respects. Okay, death is the last respects. The first respects. That's something. That's a twist on the line I've actually got here, but the first respects, that's something that might be interesting here. This tenor. Better to be harangued. The twist of theory. Let's see. Let's see here. Cancer-filled air, cut from the no. Smallness of this. Smallness. Now Gein could recognize smallness. The smallness. Now my line here is the smallness of this hand you hold, which is a variant on a love poem I did for this singer girl I knew, Laurie Sinclair, a few years ago, called Girl with a Guitar, the poem was called. But the smallness of something, let's see, the smallness of, now if I have him looking out, the smallness of the window, the smallness, well, so I'll just use the word smallness might appear in here, the smallness, ellipsis here, I don't know what I'm going to use there. You will fail. One day I'll stop and you will too. That's too philosophic for a Gein poem. Bleed to know you're alive. That's too blatant, I think. Life's a hunt. Mountaintop, send me to death with a memory. I have form, shape. I like that one, but again, it's almost too facile religious. Bringing sheaves. The word sheaves is interesting. Let's see, perspective fills itself. I've used that line before. Darkness comes upon the flesh, too obvious. Okay, let's see. Years resist their memories. I've used that before. I'm tired of that variance on that line. Love's dripped out of the penis. That's too blatant. Let's see here. Music. Just the word music or muse is something that could, because maybe he found some peace. Mellifluous light of evening. I like that one, because we can set it in the morning, and he can go from morning till film. The mellifluous light of, and I even have the line here, evening, morning. So here's where synchronicity comes in. Both of these lines here, mellifluous light of evening / morning, and then a bough that for a moment sways / stays. So these are things where I was thinking variance, and now the Gein poem is focusing me in on light, and it's interesting because I was just looking before Dylan came I was just looking through a book of paintings by Vermeer. So I've got an image now, perhaps of Vermeer in a cell, Gein in a cell, and I'm trying to think of physical, instead of him doing something, just a moment, a snapshot, and how maybe Vermeer might have painted Gein. Maybe looking out a window, and I don't know yet if I'm going to focus on what's outside the window, although probably, since a bough that for a moment sways. So maybe I'm looking behind Gein, and here's this little man, and if I'm looking in the back, and I don't really have to describe him, just the name Ed Gein, I think probably will evoke enough, and it might not last for 500 years, but it'll evoke enough that having him looking at something out a sanatorium window is interesting. So that's where I'm heading now. I'm thinking, you know, Vermeer, Schneider doing Vermeer, doing Gein is a way to go here. Let's see here. I empty the world for you alone. Your breasts overflow my mouth. Sun parts the gaps of love. My heart is a jackal that preys and lunges. That's an interesting line, but again, it's too solid. Gein is someone who's lost, feeling what was felt long ago. Okay, that's a line that could tie in, feeling what was felt. It's memory, and it's using the same word in different forms, feeling what was felt. So again, in a lot of my poems, anyone going through my work, a lot of people think most of the things that appear are violence, but without a doubt the word memory or remember or forget, without a doubt, other than articles and conjunctions, those words probably appear more than any other words. So again, this is probably trending to be a memory poem, maybe Gein in the act of memory, or maybe or maybe even a third person remembering Gein doing something, I don't know, or maybe Gein remembering Gein somehow. Let's see here. Rapid frenzied with a poetry. So let's go one last page here, see if I can get one more line. On the lamb, how to twist on the lamb, that one time, 10 after 20 after 10. Most beautiful things are breathed, breathing them now, as if I spoke 1,000 tongues. Wet of a nose which remembers frenzied aftermath of a life gives you shit. Loud handles of the mind, true courage, tangle of mirrors, eternity. Okay. Now sometimes, I mean, there are times, this is a poem I'm doing, sometimes I'll have just one line that'll get me going and then it'll come a lot quicker. But in a sense this is better because it shows not being inspired and just trying to cobble something together, the craft rather than the divine inspiration here. Let's see. Okay. Best recognition. I love that. The block. Glass which you can also love. Uncaused moment. Okay, uncaused moment, that is this period. Okay, that's an interesting one, because now, okay. The uncaused moment, that's a Vermeer type phrase. The uncaused moment, that is this period. And as the line shows, the period it's talking about is the period that ends that phrase. So I've got an idea now, just seeing that line, not only just trying to incorporate the visual element, but for the poem to acknowledge that it is a piece of art, that it uses things as periods, is interesting. So we want to get a picture of Gein, but now this gives me the idea that the third person speaking in the poem is going to be acknowledging that this is an artifice, and that's interesting, and it adds levels to it. So I think and what I generally do is I try to use 10 or 11 syllables in my sonnets, and I'm probably going to take the easy way out and probably do that rather than try to do something more complex because just out of time constraints. But I think, yeah, the uncaused moment that is this period. That's an interesting, because it's something you wouldn't think about a poem by a killer. So let's try that. The uncaused moment that is this period. Oh, perfect, 11 syllables. The uncaused moment that is this period. The uncaused moment that is this. So now, but if I'm going to directly, so I have to drop the period. The uncaused moment that is this comma. Yeah. That is this comma. So right there I've just gone, I had that line, but these lines that I've got here are basically templates from which to, so I've got 10 syllables there because I want that line to flow into. The uncaused moment that is this comma is a bough that for a moment stays. Let's see, that's only mine, is the bough. And I'm thinking I'm not going to mention Gein in the poem. I'll have Gein in the title, which will be enough there, and it'll be anonymous. And what that does too is it separates the title from the poem, and it makes them two equal partners that you have. If you read the poem separately, you're going to have one thing, and then the title adds another dimension. And since I want to acknowledge the artifice of the poem and the Vermeer-like dimension of looking at Gein, it gives a number of perspectival insights. So let's see. The uncaused moment that is this comma is the bough that for a moment sways. Is the bough that for but a moment sways, and but a moment sways, because I've already acknowledged the comma there. And so even in the first two lines here, the uncaused moment that is this comma, and there's a comma at the end of this line, is the bough that for comma but comma a moment sways. So the word but uses the comma. It's a comment right one line in the middle of the next line underneath about the comma and the artifice of the poem, and the word but there really shouldn't be in that line, but it's the artist sort of intruding and saying this is an artifice. Now whether or not that works, I don't know, but I think it's interesting. And we haven't even yet gotten to the person yet. So now I'm going back to the original idea. I've got the introduction, I've got the insight into the poem, and now I'm thinking, okay, we want to get to Gein here. Oh, so much goddamn dust. The uncaused moment that is this comma is the bough that, and I also have the use of the uncaused moment for moments sways. So I've got the word moment working there, and I don't mind using that the same word twice in the two lines there, since I'm in these two lines it's announcing the artifice of the poem. The uncaused moment that is this comma is the bough that for but a moment sways, as only it relates, as only it relates to the day, as only it relates to the day. The uncaused moment that is this comma, that's 10, is the bough that for but a moment sways, 10. So I'm, as only it relates to the day. Let's see. Well, so I've got the word day here. So and right now I'm not thinking of doing a Shakespearean sonnet or this sonnet. Sometimes I'll do without rhyme. I did a poem to sonnet a couple of days ago, Danae, which was unrhymed sonnet, but with syllabically correct. But now since I've got sways and day in this next line, I'm thinking doing an ABBA, quatrains, and I still don't know whether I'm going to do, a Shakespearean or a Baudelairean form here. But let's see here. The uncaused moment that is this comma is the bough that for but a moment sways, as only it relates, let's see, as only it relates, as only it relates to the day, as only its green relates to the day, because okay, we want to get some kind of visual element. As let's see, let's see, the uncaused moment that is this comma is the bough that for but a moment sways, as only it relates to the day, as only its, as only its, as only its motion relates the day. So that gives me the 10 syllables in that line. As only its motion relates the day. Instead of relating to the day, to relate the day is a more active, because you're taking the image of the swaying bough and it's grabbing hold of the day rather than just being in relation to the day. So the dropping of the to there is good. So let's see here. The uncaused moment that is this comma is the bough that for but a moment sways, as only its motion relates the day. So now I'm going to look for something, comma, it doesn't have to necessarily be a direct rhyme, but I'm leaning and doing at least 2 opening quatrains here. The uncaused moment that is this comma is the bough that for but a moment sways, as only its motion relates the day. As only its motion relates the day, beyond the bars, and a word like bars always puts me in a Tennysonian type or Yeatsian type mood. What is that? The Pilgrim Soul kind of thing. As only its motion relates the day, beyond the bars, beyond the bars that would infer, beyond the bars that could. Beyond the uncaused moment that is this comma is the bough that for but a moment sways, as only its motion relates the days, beyond the bars, beyond the bars, beyond the bars that moment infers, beyond the bars that let's see. The uncaused moment, you're not going to be able to see well because I'm dead right, that's why we'll be typing it, and that's the final thing where I finally polish it. But the uncaused moment that is this comma is the bough that for but a moment sways, as only its motion relates the day, beyond the bars. I don't know if I'm going to bring Gein in at this moment, or should I, maybe what might be most effective is not to let Gein come in until the very end. The uncaused moment, and that'll give it a Wallace Stevens type feel. The uncaused moment that is this comma is the bough that for but a moment sways, as only its motion relates the day, beyond the bars. I'm looking for that other mellifluous light of the evening, morning. Okay, I think I got that. So I want to relate something to the time of the, as only its motion relates the day, beyond the bars, that the time infers, beyond the bars. Let's see. The uncaused moment that is this comma is the bough that for but a moment sways, as only its motion relates the day, beyond the bars, that beyond the bars that this sonnet infers. Okay, now I just had the idea because comma infers is a sort of slant. Infer, comma is sort of a slant rhyme, and with the S there, but it works on. And because in just reading here, I was going for the visual, but now I'm thinking not to do that, because the uncaused moment that is this comma is the bough. So the comma is the bough, and so while that's the visual element within the poem, the comma, the artifice of the literature of the poem, the words here, the technique, is what is the bough. And I'm thinking that's something. That's an abstraction. So that's why instead of beyond the bars, I was looking for a visual image. You know, that these bars or that this window infers. But I said, well, if I've got the comma here and the comma is the bough, then the bars, perhaps on his gate, can be the actual sonnet. And so now I'm thinking of making the actual poem form somehow the thing that hermetically seals in this person. I still haven't mentioned, the murderous intent here. So let's see here. The uncaused moment that is this comma is the bough that for but a moment sways, as only its motion relates the day beyond the bars that this sonnet infers. That this sonnet infers as the mellifluous light of evening. As the morning, no, because I got mellifluous morning, mellifluous. As the mellifluous light of morning. And so I've got morning, I don't need that, and I had sways. So I'm going to use some variant of the line, the bough that for but a moment sways, as with stays, and then morning with evening. And probably at the end of this quatrain here, or maybe not, maybe it'll be at the, because I'm thinking of going Baudelairean, 4-4-3-3 in terms of line structure now. The uncaused moment that is this comma is the bough that for but a moment sways, as only its motion relates the day beyond the bars that this sonnet infers, as the mellifluous light of morning inters his eyes within. That's one of my favorite words. Don Moss thinks I obsess on within and without, but what the hell. Inters his eyes within this space in time. So I get Alvin Lee back in this space in time. And time is also a great word because there's so much that you can rhyme with it. So as you notice, I sometimes keep going, especially, I don't do this in longer 3 or 4 page poems, go back to the beginning of the poem, but with a sonnet here, I just try to get sometimes the rhythms, and sometimes words come to me just by listening to the sounds here. The uncaused moment that is this comma is the bough that for but a moment sways, as only its motion relates the day beyond the bars that this sonnet infers, as the mellifluous light of morning inters his eyes within this space and time, beyond, and let's see, I got 2 beyonds, I'm going to lose one of them, but I'm just setting the first template here. His eyes within this space and time, beyond that place where he was sublime, beyond. Okay, wait a minute, because I got comments on, so maybe using the word rhyme itself. As the mellifluous light of morning inters his eyes within this space and time, beyond that joy, undeterred by this rhyme, beyond that joy, undeterred by his rhyme. So now, already here, the first, halfway through, basically, the first draft here, I've already established that I'm too committed now with using the words in the poem like comma and sonnet and...
Just a second.
Oh.
So let me get this reset.
Is that a 90-minute tape, or...?
It'll run 2 hours.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because we should be able to get that done easy. Oh.
No. Okay.
Okay, I'm kind of liking the way this is going because I was a bit worried that I was going to do something that wasn't at least interesting. You know, I can, you know, it would be nice if I could just boom, 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 pop out a great sonnet, but already from the first time, just looking at the Gein info, I've already gone far beyond what I thought. And now in the first 7 lines here, I've got the word comma, the word sonnet, and the word rhyme. So I've gotten the artifice of the poem well established within the rhetorical metaphor within here. So now the first half of the poem, the uncaused moment that is this comma is the bough that for but a moment sways, as only its motion relates the day beyond the bars that this sonnet infers, as the mellifluous light of morning inters his eyes within this space and time, beyond that joy undeterred by his rhyme, by this rhyme. And I've got I've got some nice little tricks going on here too. For example, the end of line 4, I've got infers, and I've got a nearly dead-on rhyme that starts line 6, infers, inters, and it's just one beat off. And so it's something too that just rhythmically, if you're reading it, and it's kind of, you know, I'm not a believer in metrics, the metric fallacy. I'll rail against that sometime. But by having a rhyme, you know, at the end of one line and the beginning of another line, just 2 lines down, it's something that almost is like a record skipping, and it psychically or psychologically implants in someone's mind that there's a slip somewhere, which is good because that's something that maybe again, you know, again going back to like a facial tic, this is something that just structurally implies a little bit off, something that's just not right, and we still haven't gotten into Gein really here. Inters his eyes, because the only mention is his, so that's Gein doesn't appear, or just his eyes. So let's see here. Now I need to rhyme morning again. The uncaused moment that is this comma is the bough that for but a moment sways, as only its motion relates the day beyond the bars that this sonnet infers. As the mellifluous light of morning inters his eyes within this space and time, beyond that joy undeterred by this rhyme, where he smiles, where he smiles, where he smiles, where he smiles in a way just seeming, smiles in a way just seeming.